Morning, everybody. How are we doing here? We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram. We're all good. It's 8:30. Let me get my notes going here. Just check the Instagram. Your comments, if you want to say hi, please reach out on whatever platform you're listening. And I think we are good to go. Welcome, everybody. December 11th, 2024. Happy Wednesday, episode 313 of Mornings with Scott, the best damn business show for medium and small businesses on the planet. Welcome to you from Calgary. As I was logging in here, there was a post. Sounds good on Facebook. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks for you're actually logged in on my account, so I'm seeing comments from myself. Is what I see happening here. That's just strange. So, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last night spoke, and last night being Tuesday night, said that women's rights and women's progress is under attack. And as evidence, he pointed to the recent defeat of the U.S. President Kamala Harris as an example. He was speaking at the Equal Voice Foundation. Trudeau said there are regressive forces fighting against women's progress. This is from the Globe and Mail in Canada, by the way. Shouldn't be that way. It wasn't supposed to be that way, he said. We were supposed to be on a steady, if difficult sometimes, march towards progress. Adding that he is a proud feminist and he will always be an ally. And just a few weeks ago, he said the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Woman president. He may have left out that the first Canadian Prime Minister lasted, I think, about 3 weeks. You guys can correct me on how long she lasted, but it wasn't good. Everywhere women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly, says Trudeau. So is that what happened? Is that, again, I was just logging in when I see the story, but is that what you think happened in the United States, or was it the inflation? Was it the economy? Was it the border being dominant as an election issue, and Kamala Harris's inability to separate herself from the failed policies of the Biden-Harris regime? That's not a political statement, but the voters thought those policies were failed, clearly, which is why I'm not above giving a political statement, by the way, but that wasn't. I mean, clearly the voters said that's no good for us, and they hold Kamala responsible. This just seems to me to be a constant liberal failure to listen to people. You see that on the Democrat side. to listen to their voters, to listen to constituents. You see it in Canada on the Liberal side. To say that this is sexism just seems to me to be completely out of touch and living in your bubble. And by the way, if you're leading up a negotiation with the US on tariffs and trade, I'm just, my computer's spamming me with background items and Microsoft wanting to download things. So sorry about that. Just bear with me. If you're leading up a negotiation, is this the best way to go about it? Is the best thing to say, hey, Trump, you only got elected because of sexism? This guy's an idiot. Canada's going to get crushed. He's ruined this country for many, many people, and he's ruined the economy, and we will recover when we have new leadership, and Canada will recover because it has resources. So it has value that he can't just dissipate and get and throw away. It's not like it's a going concern. He's ruined the going concern part of it, but the resources, the fundamental value is still there. If we get rid of Trudeau, there's hope, but wow, is he bad? All right, sorry, I was just logging on and that just caught my attention. Inflation in the U.S. back up to 2.7%. For November, it was announced this morning. It's not much of an uptick. It's 2.6, but as a reminder, the month before. But as a reminder, the target is 2%. And by the way, I see all sorts of X posts and people commenting that prices are still going up. They're not going down. Folks, prices are not going down. Lower inflation does not mean prices are going down. Lower inflation means that prices are going up a little bit more slow than they were going up before. They're not going down. This is not going to help you if you're struggling to pay for goods. What it will help you if you're struggling to pay for goods is a higher after-tax income, take-home pay, which could be accomplished by President Trump's tax cuts if he gets them done right away, but I don't think Congress is going to get them done right away. So there's some stress and concern about this for sure. As a reminder, the target is 2% core inflation, which eliminates things that you have to pay for, like food and energy, is actually 3.3%. It's higher than the 2.7. So the cost of gas has come down a little bit, which is, made the real inflation 2.7, whereas the core is 3.3. Everything's still getting more expensive. They have not dealt with this. There's two ways to deal with this inflation, and one of them is to crush the economy like we have done in Canada, and therefore demand goes down because nobody has any money to buy stuff. And if demand goes down, prices can stop going up, maybe even drop in some cases. And the other way is to create more supply, more housing supply, more energy supply, more whatever supply. And the way to do that is through less regulation. And so that's what needs to happen under the Trump economy. We will see. Meanwhile, in Canada, we were looking for a cut in interest rates this morning, and just as I was logging on, it was announced there was another 50 basis point cut in interest rates in Canada. So mortgages should go down, business lending should go down, the price of it should go down. But people are now saying this needed to be done because Canada's in a recession, an undisclosed recession. We're not going to disclose a recession when there's clearly if we can avoid it, when there's clearly an election coming up within the next 12 months at some point. So interest rates going down. We're in a recession, but yeah, because we crushed the demand side of the economy to tackle inflation. Our inflation in Canada is pretty good. I think it's below 2% at this point. And the reason, which I say pretty good, but that's not actually good. You want a little bit of inflation to keep the economy growing. I don't know. Speaking of which, all of this, I'm having a good time here in Calgary. And I had a bunch of meetings and drinks last night. I can't believe that I actually made it, and hopefully I'm coherent today. It was a late night, and what was a late night was dinner and drinks with a bunch of alternative private credit lenders, and many of them from Toronto. So it was ironic that I meet with them in Calgary. And so these are people that do small business bridge loans. 1 million to 3 million was one group. Another group was doing sub 10 million loans to businesses, maybe asset-based loans, mostly asset-based loans, I would think. And another group that was doing in excess of $10 million loans to business. So 10 to 100 million. So I think we had the whole gamut of $100 million and less to businesses covered in our dinners and martinis. And my takeaway from it was several things, but one of them was that everybody's busy, like really, really busy. The non-bank financing sector in Canada is in great demand, and the supply is not very good because of things we've covered on this show before. Many of the private credit lenders have blown up and their source of capital is gone. And so it's left a real void. It's left a real void here, and you're starting to see the US groups move in to fill that void, and new little specialty funds pop up to deal with that. I had a long talk about that in another meeting yesterday. So hopefully some more news on that sector coming up into early 2025 with respect to me and you, and our show. We'll be discussing that. So hard to find some of what's going on in the news. Like, you know, the news has been dominated not by interesting financial things we can learn from, but from Luigi Mangioni. I think that's how I say his name. Dominated by this was the murderer of the insurance CEO in Toronto last week, and they arrested him yesterday while I was traveling, or maybe even late Monday while I was traveling, and then we didn't do a show yesterday due to technical problems. And so the news is dominated by that, by international wars that I try not to talk about. And so anyways, I just find this Mangione story very, very interesting. Does anybody find this weird? Does anybody have their tinfoil hat on, a little conspiracy? I don't know. I just find the writing on the bullets thing to be weird. It's just a little on the nose, don't you think? And the monopoly money, as I talked about Monday, that they found in his bag that was left in Central Park, the fact that he's an Ivy Leaguer, comes from a super wealthy family in Baltimore, and was a valedictorian of his prep school, and now he's a wannabe hitman, or I guess he's not wannabe anymore, but he tried to do it professionally. He tried to get away with it. How do you 3D print a ghost gun? Like, is he doing that in his garage, or had nobody noticed, or what the hell's going on there? With a silencer, by the way. I don't know. This is all weird. Where do you get all these fake IDs? Maybe people do that, but he had a bunch of fake IDs when they arrested him, and carrying around a generic manifesto. It didn't name this particular CEO that he killed, but he's carrying around his generic manifesto. So that I find that weird. And why did he have a manifesto at all? I thought the manifestos were for, the school shooters or the mass killers who know for a fact they're going to get caught or they're going to get killed. And so they pre-write this out, and that's their way to communicate their message to the world, because they're trying to send a message to the world. Well, this guy clearly tried to escape, right? It's very strange. And it's a generic manifesto. Instead of not against this CEO, yet how did he randomly pick this particular CEO who's not from New York? He was from Minnesota in on business and wandered outside his Hilton Hotel at 6:45 a.m. And this gunman knew that and was hanging out there waiting for it. Was that on the internet, the itinerary? I'm not buying that. It's weird. And when he was arrested at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, and he was accused of having the ghost gun on him, illegal, fake IDs, illegal, lying to the police, illegal, and then of course all the news was talking about him being the murderer in New York, obviously illegal. He didn't say anything about that, but when they said they had 10 grand of real cash in his bag, that's what he freaked out about. He said, no, I don't have any money. That was a plant. Like, what's going on with that? Why complain about that one thing? I don't know. There's newspaper reports, news reports, not newspaper reports of him being schizophrenic, and maybe there's some mental illness there, perhaps, but there's no proof of that yet. All of that to say, I don't believe any of this. This is a interesting story that we should follow along and see what else we learned. All right, let's get down to business here. Wall Street Journal reports that Macy's probe found employee acted alone in a $151 million accounting scandal. $151 million in an accounting scandal. Sounds like a lot. Macy's has completed its investigation into accounting problems and found that a single employee mistake and subsequent cover-up created $151 million in false bookkeeping entries, according to the person briefed with the probe. There's no allegation of fraud in this story. The allegation is accounting error by one employee who then covered it up. And went down that slippery slope of covering up your accounting problems. The discovery prompted the retailer in November to postpone reporting its quarterly financial results for 2 weeks, which triggered a huge sell-off in Macy's shares. So in November, they don't report, they delay, everybody sells the shares because what the hell is going on? And then we learn they do their investigation, and it's an accounting error for $151 million. The employee told investigators about having mistakenly understated the amount of small parcel delivery expenses in 2021. And then he just continued, or he or she, doesn't say which, just continued to cover this up with more false entries. And it said that the employee on Wednesday today, said the employee had hid roughly $151 million cumulatively of these expenses from the fourth quarter of 2021 to the third quarter of 2024. The company said there was no impact to Macy's revenue, cash, inventory, or vendor payments. Macy's has previously estimated the erroneous entries obscured between 132 million and 154 million, and it turns out the actual number is 151. So, are you believing any of this? I'm a little skeptical on the news on this one as well. So they say that the expenses are understated by $151 million and no one noticed. We didn't record these expenses. There was a air quotes mistake and no one noticed this. Yet our vendor payments are not impacted. They're not impacted. So here's the debits and credits of this. You do a small delivery expense, right? And so you have to put in the expense, which they did not do. And then the other side to that is you have to pay the vendor that did delivery, which apparently they did do, which means that their books are out of balance. That's the way accounting works. So their books are out of balance and no one noticed. Something is wrong with this picture. And then they delay their reporting. They delay their financial reporting for 2 weeks and the stock takes a dive over this, what they initially estimated to be $132 million to $154 million issue. Well, total expenses at Macy's are $22.2 billion estimated in, I think, 93 or 94. Anyways, 22. So over a 4-year period, you're talking $80 to $90 billion. Maybe this is more like a 3-year period. So let's call it $60 to $70 billion. So 151 million is a small fraction of that. This is a big company, right? So you're talking about 0.15% off the top of my head, not even a percentage on your expenses. 0.15% spread over a 3-4 year period. There's a concept in accounting called materiality, and this is not it. Materiality is you don't worry too much about stuff that might be wrong if it doesn't reach, as an auditor, if it doesn't reach a threshold of value that is worth spending your time on. That's what materiality is in the auditing world. So how is 0.15% of your expenses spread out over a few years anywhere close to materiality? Why did they delay the results? You would not have to delay your results if you knew that this was going to be the quantum range of this particular problem. So I'm not buying that. And I'm not buying that the books were out of balance because, well, they were out of balance, but I'm not buying that they knew that and put a stop to things. I'm just not, that they missed that. I'm just not buying that. I mean, if you're an accountant, things being out of balance is a really big deal. They used to tell us when I was an auditor back in the day, when I was training to become this financial guru that I am, they used to tell us, if you had $100 million one way and $101 million the other way, you're only out 100 million plus $1 the other way. You're only out $1 on your reconciliation, but it could be millions one way and millions the other way. You don't know. If you're out $1, you have to track that down. You have to track that down. So I don't know what's going on at Macy's. This makes no sense. Wall Street Journal goes on to say that we concluded our investigation and we're strengthening our existing controls and implementing additional changes designed to prevent this from happening. Yeah, That was the CEO, Tony Spring. Well, they better be, because their books are out of balance, which is not acceptable. And they're delaying reporting and killing shareholder value over something that's clearly immaterial. We are not getting the full story here, folks. Macy's didn't say how it uncovered the erroneous entries or how they went undetected by the company's auditor, KPMG. I'll tell you how. They're not material. KPMG doesn't care. They still don't care. They care about the system issue, because if you have a systemic issue, which clearly they do in this particular case, then that brings a risk of further material problems. But this is not a material problem, and so we're close to being a material problem. Therefore, KPMG does not care about this specific outcome. They do care about the system, and auditors give accounting firms, give their clients a reporting letter at the end of their engagement and say, hey, by the way, so your books or records are good. We're going to sign off on these financial statements, but here's a reporting letter. We found all these system problems along the way and risks, and so Wall Street Journal should know that. What else have we got here? And so something else is going on here at Macy's, and Barrington Capital was reported last week has built a substantial position in Macy's and is pushing the department store operator to make changes. So this is an activist investor to boost his slumping stock, including the creation of a separate real estate unit within the company and a possible sale or spinoff of Bloomingdale's and Blue Mercury, which cater to a different cohort, more upscale shoppers. So they don't report. The stock dives, and then an activist investor comes in and buys the cheap stock, and now the company's in place, so to speak, all over this stupid little issue. Again, I'm not buying any of this. Speaking of retail, by the way, I don't have any. Well, maybe I do. So the Wall Street Journal also reports that Zara, Z-A-R-A, owner Inditex, Inditex, posts higher sales amid fierce low-cost competition. Zara parent report, I'm not going to try and say that word again, reported an increase in sales as at the start of its final quarter as its fall and winter collections delivered against a backdrop of intense competition from low-cost retailers. Zara is if you don't know, I don't even know what it is, but it's a fashion store. I think it's predominantly women's fashion store. They have one in Toronto, where I'm originally from. Why did I do this story? I just find it interesting. This is more of a twist. This is a marketing story. Zara's doing well. I have a trip to Toronto planned with family in early January for a personal reason, to which my 11-year-old daughter said, can I go shopping? I said, yeah, we can go shopping, because we live on a small mountain town and coal mining town, and there's no real stores there to get more fashion stuff, or she would say preppy stuff. She's an 11-year-old kid, and she comes right out and she says, Dad, can we go to Zara? How does she know about Zara? Like, we don't have a Zara in our town. She'd never been to a Zara in her life. I don't know how she's even heard of a Zara. It's not like they're everywhere. It's not it's not like going to the Hudson Bay in Canada or to Macy's, which are everywhere. But she flat out says, I want to go to a Zara at 11 years old from a small mountain resort town. So I said, hey, how do you know about Zara? And she said, well, from YouTube Kids. YouTube Kids, it's super preppy. I have to go to Zara because I want to be preppy. And I saw this on YouTube Kids. So maybe Zara's knocking it out of the park, not because of the economy, but because they're excellent at marketing. They certainly got to my 11-year-old and our entire class, by the way. This seems to be a thing. They all love their Zara and they want to go there, which reminds me, I had an interesting conversation. One of my meetings yesterday here in Calgary was with a marketing guru and financial guru, and we were talking about Google and Googling things. And I said, hey, man, when's the last time you Googled something? I have not Googled one thing in probably 6 months. I use the search function on ChatGPT. I use Perplexity, right? All of it, artificial intelligence. And instead of trying to Google something, I'll say, hey, I heard a story about this, that, and the other thing. Summarize that for me, and it does a terrific job. Oh, I met somebody, I think it's from this bank. Can you just tell me their full name? Can you find that? And it does a great job. I don't Google anything. I think Google search is dead. I think artificial intelligence is going to replace that. I think it's already started to replace that. And that artificial intelligence may be from Google. I don't use a Google product that I'm aware of, but it might be from Google. And it raises a really interesting questions for the Zaras of the world, for our medium and small businesses. How do we market? Because a Google AdWords or a placement, like trying to get on page one of a Google search, I guess we have to keep doing that, but it's not going to be enough, because as I had this conversation with this marketing sales guru yesterday, it's like he says, you know, what you're going to do is you're in Vermont and you're going to say, hey, I need a plumber for my house. Who's the best plumber that you can get sent over here? And the artificial intelligence is going to answer that for you. But then the question becomes, how does the artificial intelligence decide who the best plumber is? Because it's not just going to be ratings. He pushed back on that, by the way, that the ratings will be a part of it. I think, obviously, it's going to be about money. Who pays to be the, air quotes, best plumber in Vermont to be recommended? So the marketing world is changing. Artificial intelligence is changing that entirely. And so that's we need to stay on top of that and figure out what it's going to do for our businesses. Wall Street Journal reports that the crypto industry, I know, you've all been waiting for this crypto story. And so that's why you've logged in. The crypto industry hopes Trump can finally get the bank accounts. Crypto industry is hoping for a fresh start with the banking industry. Many banks backed away from crypto companies and their founders after catastrophic blowups of FTX. That was the fraud in the Bahamas that you all heard about. And other crypto firms in 2022. Two banks that had been serving the industry collapsed, and crypto founders struggled to find new ones willing to take their deposits or lend to them. Banking regulators issued warnings, and then a string of lawsuits against crypto companies such as Coinbase, Kraken, Binance hammered home the message to stay away. Donald Trump's election win has spurred a rally in cryptocurrency prices and enthusiasm, and Trump pledged to create a national Bitcoin stockpile and form a council. He didn't pledge that. What he pledged to do was to not sell the Bitcoin that the U.S. government already has. Why does the U.S. government have Bitcoin? Are they out buying Bitcoin? No, they have assets in Bitcoin because they are seizing from criminals their Bitcoin. And they seized the BMW and the speedboat, and so that's why they have Bitcoin. And what he said was, "I will not sell that," and therefore put downward pressure on the crypto. Founders and other inside crypto industry are hoping for new regulators who champion crypto assets at banks and a change to the policy that urges banks to consider a client's reputation. So what does that mean? Let's get a little inside baseball here. When banks don't want to do business with you, with your industry, cannabis, firearms, all the sin business, alcohol in some jurisdictions, what else? Porn. They don't want to do that. And now crypto, what they say is, and the reason they don't want to do your business is because the regulators have made things murky for the bank, and energy. Oil and gas is another one. Oh, I'm not against fracking, but I've talked to the Fed, and the Fed has talked to the banks, and they don't want the banks lending on fracking or coal or any sort of old school carbon-based energy sources. We'd rather just you don't fund that industry. That would be really good. So the banks are very nervous when they have regulators coming at them and sending out signals that they hate an industry, like cannabis in the U.S. Well, even in Canada, even though it's perfectly legal, like cannabis, like crypto. And so what the banks do is they say, well, everything's legal. Even the regulator doesn't say it's illegal, but we're worried about what's going to happen. And so what we do is we say we don't want to bank that industry because of reputational risk. Maybe something's going to come back on us down the road. And that's quite common in the industry, this reputational risk issue. So last week, Trump said venture capitalist David Sachs would become the new White House crypto czar. Shortly after the announcement, Sachs posted on X saying this bank issue, quote, needs to be looked at. Banks have been closing accounts and refusing to bank crypto companies and their founders this year, according to industry insiders. Nick Carter, founding partner at venture firm Castle Island Ventures, said every U.S.-based company in his early stage startup portfolio has had issues finding a banking partner. It was the same in the cannabis business. I spent like 6 months of my life around Colorado trying to find a banking partner for a extraction business that we had there, and we ended up at Bank of the West, which were terrific in that space, and they're a state bank, right? And then Bank of the West was bought by Bank of Montreal, by BMO, which would not, no way in hell could we have gone and opened an account at BMO to do that business, and I exited that business before we see what happened with the BMO relationship. But I suspect if we continued on, we would have slowly been debanked from that situation as well. Banking crypto is still a poison chalice today, end quote, Carter said. They do not want the eye of, so reference to the Lord of the Rings, then I had too many martinis last night to read that particular sentence. Trump allies Mark Andreessen and Elon Musk have brought renewed attention to this issue in recent weeks, spurring crypto founders to share their own banking troubles on social media. This issue's all over X for sure. And it started with somebody on the on Rogan podcast, which started this whole debanking debate. Shortly after the Rogan episode was published, several crypto founders share stories of big banks, including JP Morgan, Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, closing their banking accounts, but also their personal accounts. Like they just oust you, even personally, from the entire bank. Many accuse the regulators, as I just said, of targeting the crypto industry. Regulators usually don't tell banks they can't do business with customers operating in legitimate businesses. Instead, they will categorize customers as higher risk through formal public statements, and similar concerns have long led banks to reject clients in industries such as guns, marijuana, pornography. Yeah, like I said. January 2023, regulators from the Federal Reserve, Federal Deposit Insurance Corp, and Office of the Comptroller of Currency issued warnings to the banks that were concerned about crypto ties. So that's the favorite tool. There it is, the tool of regulators, of aggressive activist governments. We don't want to politically pass a law that say crypto is illegal. We don't want to do that. We don't want to pass a law that says you can't bank crypto companies and we should just starve the industry of capital. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to aggressively issue cloudy regulation so that nobody understands the rules of the game, and everybody knows that you step your toe into this stuff, they're just going to come whack you, because if there's cloudy regulation, they can make up anything. They can make up anything to come after you, including debanking, freezing accounts, not lending. This is a scourge on the economy. Remember, I said inflation can be cured in part by dealing with supply side regulation. This is a big part of it. This is a part of it. This aggressive, politically driven, cloudy regulation intended to scare you off from being in the business, from being in crypto, from being in cannabis, from being in oil and gas. I'm not banning fracking. But you're starving it to death from banning the sin industries. In Canada, and this is not just U.S., by the way. This is not just the U.S. Democrats. It's a playbook from the liberal side of the political equation. Canada, Europe, everybody does. UK, everybody's doing the same thing. Canada froze the bank accounts of truckers during a protest. He froze the bank accounts of a coffee shop owner who served coffee to truckers. Right? Incredibly aggressive. Really probably illegal. I think there was hearings on that, and it was illegal. They did the same thing in the U.S. In the U.S. with the Jan 6 protesters. Hey, we don't like that. They go after the banks, and they get the receipt, so to speak, on anybody who entered into Washington, D.C. around that time, and then they start digging through your financial records, and they're seizing those bank accounts and freezing those accounts. Do you know how hard it is to live in life without access to a bank account? Can you imagine right now, those of you listening, Ashley, if you're on there, imagine your bank account just being frozen right now and you're not able to pay your rent or buy some food. without any warning, without any legal process, without anybody. Call the bank and complain about it and see what good that's going to do. They're just going to ignore you. It's going to take you 6 to 9 months for you to get your money back to pay your rent or buy your food. That's what's going on out there. Look at, if you run a business, here's the advice that's coming out of this. Apart from vote in a government that's going to have less regulations and shady activist behavior, but apart from that, if you run a business, you need multiple streams of cash management and cash custody. You need to not be tied to one bank. The larger you get, the more opportunities you should have to diversify your custody and cash management risk, even in different jurisdictions. I don't see this issue going away. I think it might be less of a problem through Trump, but and Poilievre if he's elected in Canada, but I don't see it going away. Well, it was a big night for me last night, yet here I am just battling away for past the time. I've gone on long story about that, but I just don't like this debanking stuff. It really pisses me off. All right, this has been Mornings with Scott. Where are we here? Yeah, we are past this time. I will see you tomorrow, hopefully, barring any particular issues, 8:30 Mountain Times. Thanks for joining.